Explosions 4,000 kilometers deep inside Russia over the weekend. A daring Ukrainian drone assault that has crippled multiple Russian air bases, stunning the Kremlin and casting a long, dark shadow, viewers, over renewed peace talks that are taking place in Istanbul as we speak. Just a day after what Ukrainian military sources are calling Operation Spiderweb. A precision strike said to have destroyed over 40 Russian bombers. Negotiators from Kiev and Moscow face off once again in Istanbul at a luxury Ottoman-era palace. On one side, Ukraine's scandal-hit defense minister Rustem Umerov, armed with a bold roadmap for peace, or his version of the peace. On the other end, Vladimir Medensky, Putin's hardline aide, who's publicly questioned Ukraine's very right to exist. Ukraine demands an unconditional ceasefire, return of its abducted children, and no recognition of Russian-held territories. That's, of course, that's what Ukraine's bucket list is. Now, Russia says that it's demanding Kiev surrender land, abandon NATO, and lift sanctions. With America's self-declared negotiator-in-chief sidelined and the battlefield heating up, hope for peace in Istanbul may already be going up in smoke. Talks may continue for hours together and maybe even through the night. That's what some reports indicate. But with both sides dug in and bombs still falling, the road to peace looks steeper than ever in the past. I want to quickly play out, in fact, this ground report that has been filed by Anastasia Volodina from Istanbul, and then we go and talk this in greater detail.
Just moments away from the much-anticipated talks between Moscow and Kiev, and this time it will mark the second round of talks in just a little over 2 weeks. And we have the most beautiful spot right here. We're just on the opposite side of the Bosphorus with the Chiran Palace just to the left side of me. And this is the place where the two sides, Moscow and Kiev, will sit down for the second round of talks. And Russian delegation touched down in Istanbul on Sunday. The Russian delegation is going to be led again, of course, by Vladimir Medinsky, who also led the Russian delegation back in March of 2022 and back on May 16th. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov underlined that Russia will present Ukraine with its version of the memorandum on the conflict resolution, but once again underlined and stated that the first and foremost root causes of the conflict must be eliminated. US Special Envoy Keith Kellogg also confirmed that it is indeed a proxy war against Russia happening on Ukrainian soil. And we have to recall a little bit what happened during the last peace talks on May 16th. Well, Kiev and Moscow back then agreed on the biggest prisoner POW exchange, 1,000 for 1,000, including civilians as well as military personnel. And the two sides also agreed to present each other with its version of the memorandum on the conflict resolution. And according to the head of the Russian delegation, Vladimir Medinsky, Moscow has received the Ukrainian memorandum that has been presented, of course, in Ukrainian and English languages. But to which Medinsky actually stated that no, it doesn't matter in which language the Ukrainian side presents its memorandum to Russia, because among those who are in the Russian delegation, there are those who actually also speak Japanese.
All right, that, of course, was Anastasia Volodina giving a sense of how things are looking like in Istanbul. And while the talks continue, the big questions, of course, as always, on India Global. First up, is Ukraine's drone attack Russia's Pearl Harbour? Secondly, will Kiev's drone attack spark new escalations? And that, of course, means the war entering a new phase completely. Thirdly, are Istanbul's peace talks only symbolic, simply because, well, they're coming in the backdrop of the war actually escalating, given that Ukraine has struck so deep inside Russian territory? And will Russia give security guarantees to Ukraine? This is a slightly off question, but this is essentially the crux of what the entire peace talks are all about, which is that can anything actually move forward there? At the end of the day, it's actually America that has to give security guarantees to Ukraine. All right, let's quickly now get in James Dorsey, who is a journalist, adjunct senior fellow at RSIS, joining us live to talk more about this. So as things stand right now, we are playing out those visuals. You have the Russian folks coming in their long black sedans and their suits, and the Ukrainian folks who came in their military fatigues, always proving a point. The stage is set for round two. in the backdrop of a military escalation that probably this war hasn't seen till now, Ukraine striking so deep inside the Russian territory. Do you think these talks have any meaning at this stage? Do you think anything can be expected out of these?
Talks always have meanings. I think, first of all, with regard to the drone strikes by the Ukrainians, these go far beyond in terms of importance of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. They're going to have military planners across the world thinking and rethinking the defense of their air installations. This was an attack unprecedented in its form and success, but that really shifts the paradigm of battles. That's one thing. It also, more importantly, for the Ukraine-Russian talks, also to a degree changes the paradigm. If you think back of Ukrainian President Zelensky's session in the Oval Office with President Trump in February, Trump was saying to him, "You don't have any cards to play." Well, Ukraine, with these attacks, showed that it does have cards to play. The problem with the negotiations is the Ukrainians have made public what their stance is going into the negotiations. The Russians have not done so, but one can assume that there is not going to be much movement from their positions, which means that the gap between the Ukrainians and the Russians remains as wide as it has been.
And unfortunately, as things stand right now, Mr. Dorsey, the role of negotiators like America to really bridge that gap between the two positions, unfortunately, has been weakened, hasn't it? Given the fact that the president has lost some political capital because he's said in the past that he's going to end this in 24 hours. That hasn't happened. And that erosion of political capital in some respects is the reason why the negotiations are not moving forward, isn't it?
Well, in a sense, you can say the glass is half full or half empty. In other words, you can argue that Trump has initiated various foreign policy issues, including Ukraine, but also Gaza, and nothing has come out of that so far. On the other hand, you can argue that by coming in with a blister, if you wish, he's basically set the framework for negotiations and changed the paradigm. Fact of the matter is that Trump has succeeded in getting the Russians and the Ukrainians to talk. Now, whether or not he's going to be able to engineer an agreement is a different question. Keep in mind that you can lead a horse to the trough, but he's got to do the drinking himself. Both of these parties want to be seen to be engaging in negotiations to resolve the conflict. Whether or not they're willing to compromise, both of them, so that a resolution becomes possible, I think remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And finally, given the fact that this is second phase of those talks, so the first one lasted about 2 hours. This has gone on for almost about 3 hours. So there's hope that maybe some incremental progress may be being made. How long do you think the entire peace roadmap may take to be thrashed out?
That's anybody's guess. I think there is not much sense in trying to put a timeline on this. Look at what's happening in the Iran negotiations. Trump put a 2-month deadline on achieving a resolution of the Iranian nuclear problem. Fact of the matter is, it cannot be resolved in 2 months. These things are much more difficult. And so what you're looking at there, and you could very well be doing the same in Ukraine, you're looking at a framework agreement, which essentially is an effort to buy time. These are going to be lengthy, drawn-out negotiations.
All right, so I'm going to leave it there and keep coming back as and when, because you said these could be long, lengthy, long-drawn conversations, and we'd probably have more time to chat at a later time. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of India Global. Well, bottom line, viewers, as far as the ongoing Russia-Ukraine peace talks is threefold. One, that the attack that has taken place deep inside Russian territory gives Ukraine a certain amount of leverage. Remember, on phase one of these peace talks, Ukraine was hardly at the table. It was Russia, it was America, and that's how peace talks were being thrashed out. Well, in second round of these peace talks, that isn't the case. It seems that Ukraine does have some cards on the table. It remains to be seen whether Russia wants to escalate this, still get some military wins, and then try for some sort of a negotiation settlement that works for them. At the end of the day, the role of Turkey and America could really be the decisive factor.